Hello, ODAC cross-country fans. My name is J.J Nekoloff. I'm the Associate Commissioner with the Old Dominion Athletic Conference, and we're previewing the 2023 cross-country season for you here. We've got three of our head coaches from the league joining us. Brandon Spalding's at Washington Lee. He runs the men's program. He's the chair of the cross-country coaches for the ODAC. Jake Reed runs the men's and women's programs at the University of Lynchburg. And new to Roanoke College is Derek Workman. He's coming in running both track and cross-country programs for the Maroons. Gentlemen, how are you today?
Doing well. Thanks for having us, JJ.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Guys, we'll kind of start off where we were first before we get to where we're going. Last season, banner campaign as far as really every level of championship competition you're talking about, from an ODAC championship that saw Lynchburg set records with 1 through 5 finishers on both the men's and women's sides and winning both titles, going to regionals where Lynchburg's women won, and we had several individuals also qualify along with both Hornets programs, so that we sent 18, 19 runners to the national championships. You know, Jake, I'm going to start with you here, as your team's commanded a lot of this stuff here. Talk about the experience last season of your squads, not just, the women winning at regionals and it having full squads at the national championship, but talk about that ODAC experience as well, where you had 15 points on both sides to claim championships. And you were the ninth straight year that the same program has won both the men's and women's title from an ODAC perspective.
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely special. W&L, they've been great for years. I've always respected what Spalding and Mike have built at W&L. And last year, we're not expecting to sweep the conference by any means. They had some really talented runners. I know Charles ended up being the top finisher from the ODAC at the national championship. And I know, there's a lot of different things that go into that, but to do it on that day, in that moment, it was really special for the program and a fun experience overall. But I don't want to short side W&L. They have great teams, and what they've been able to do over the years to get to that level and finally leave our stamp sweeping conference championship. That was definitely special. And last year's team was incredible. Being able to get to where we were, and obviously nationals didn't shake out the way we had hoped. But the experience that we got, last year, and being on that level and learning how to deal with the noise of being kind of a national level team, I think it's going to go a long way this year. Being able to kind of block that out, zone in, hone in on ourselves, and have another great year.
Brandon, you were involved in that as well with, as Jake mentioned there, Charles finishing as the top men's finisher at the national championships. Talk a little bit about that, but also in your role as chairs, where you get to represent the conference from a different perspective when you go to events like that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it was still a great year for us last year. I mean, we fell a little short at the end of the year at regionals by losing to Barry, a team we'd beat during the regular season. And other than that, the only losses we took as a program were teams that ended up running at the national meet. And certainly we were fortunate enough to have Charles in the 1 year rental last year on finishing out his eligibility for us after a great career at Dickinson. And as Jake mentioned, and as you mentioned, JJ, by the end of the season, he ended up being the top finisher at the national championship. It was the third best finish for us in program history at the cross country championships. And really, I mean, as Jake said, I mean, you got to be able to put it together on the day. I mean, sometimes late in the season, you got to be able to be a little lucky. I mean, we ran into a conference having both Josh and Charles down with a sickness. I mean, Rose Stern ended up being our number 1 guy. I mean, had a great year for us overall, but we were more penciling him in as like a number 3, 4, and he did everything he could to lead us up front. And that's just the way it goes sometimes down the stretch. But it was an incredible finish by Charles to be able to still get an individual spot and run how he did at the national meet. Not just be in the national stage, but as Jake knew, the 7 inches of snow, the wind, the cold. I mean, it was quite an experience, and certainly memorable for both of us, regardless of how finishes were. And yeah, overall as a conference, I mean, it was great to see our women have a couple individuals, Bridgewater having an individual that qualified, Aaron, who made it back to the national championships from Shenandoah. And certainly among the region. I mean, the ODAC always has a lot of all region presence, getting the national qualifiers, having some that are, right there, almost getting in. And I think we just have great representation overall. And I hope that 2023 for both our men and women across the conference is a chance to have not just team representation at the top end, maybe multiple teams, but certainly the individuals. That I think it's an expectation in the ODAC And I would speak for all coaches here to think that we're always going to have, 1 to 3 of the 7 individual spots are probably going to be ODAC runners, which is exciting for our conference.
Well, the season gets started for us all here on September 1st here on Friday, but the championship gauntlet, if you will, 4 weeks of championship competition starts with the ODAC championships, and Roanoke College is the host this year. And Derek Workman will give you a chance to introduce yourself before we talk about what to expect at Roanoke this year. So Derek, new head coach for both programs at Roanoke College. Say hi to ODAC fans and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, hi. So I'm excited to be here. Derek Workman. I'm the director here at Roanoke for both programs, as you just mentioned, and I was previously at school up outside of Pittsburgh, Washington, and Jefferson College, and so I was there for 7 years, and so I was up in a different region. We were kind of just outside the travel bubble of kind of getting to see some of these ODAC teams. We always went about 3 hours, and you start coming down here, and it was about 4 hours away. So I'm excited to be a part of this conference and get to host our cross country championships, get to host the indoor championship. So I'm excited to get to meet everybody and yeah.
I know it's been just a couple weeks here since you've got your feet under your belt, but we're gonna talk ODAC cross country championship coming down. I'm sure you've had an opportunity to look at your course. You've seen it in the past. The other two coaches we have here have experience running on that course as well. But Derek, talk to us a little bit about what to expect coming up here when we're going to be in Salem toward the end of October with the first of hopefully 3 really strong championship events when you combine it with the regionals and national championships into November.
Sure. Well, I'm excited for. I mean, obviously Salem. We have a really fast course. It hosts some of the high school state meets and everything, and there's Knights Crossing. So there's a lot of really good events that go on this course. We're hosting 3 meets on the course this year. With the preview, we have our 5K meet next week, and then obviously the ODAC championship. So it's a pretty well-known course, and so and just kind of getting out there and seeing it and everything. I'm excited for how this is all going to go, and it should be a really, really special event. So
it's been a long time since we've had a new coach we've been able to kind of talk to about some certain things like this. So before I go to Jake and Brandon for some experience on that course, when you're out there with your 5K coming up and then the ODAC preview, that sort of things, as a new coach coming into even your home course, what are you looking for as far as when you're evaluating a cross country course out there for championship competition?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, the things that I look for, I would imagine a lot of coaches all look for, right? You want to look at footing. You want to look at where are there ways that could this be a little bit better? Could we go this way instead of this way to help it flow easier so we're not having overlapping things and runners, lapping each other and those kind of things. So I think we're always looking at like, okay, where are difficult spots that we could see being an issue sort of thing. So the main things, the fact that it is a very flat course, it should be fast as long as the weather is permitting that day. But those are kind of the things that I look for. I mean, footing is really important. Like it can be hilly, it can be flat. It just is what it is. That will be the challenge of whoever is hosting that day or whatever. But I think the footing is the most important thing. You obviously don't want to have an unsafe environment for the athletes competing. So
sure, no doubt about that. And I think Brandon and Jake, we can talk a little bit about it. We've been there fairly recently. I think it was pre-COVID the last time that we had an opportunity to compete at Green Hill Park. But Brandon and Jake, in whichever order you guys want to go, talk a little bit about what we can expect the runners to experience there from a perspective of the 6K race for the women and the 8K race for the men. What are the two differences between? But it really has been a fairly fast course for us over the years too.
Sure, yeah. And we last were there in 2019. Ended up being a great championships for us. I can remember it being a very nice day. I mean, just the starting line where you're looking out on the mountains as the runners are standing there. I mean, it creates an awesome setting. I know it was very spectator friendly. Other than a few bumps with like the road crossings and stepping up on a curb, things like that. It was a fairly easy course on the athletes, and I think that was good for us heading into the year where we went to Memphis for regionals, moderately hard. course. I think this will prepare our conference well for competing at the regional meet at Barry. Barry, from when you look at it, doesn't seem like it's that tough of a course, but it has a way to eat you up a little bit too. So I think this will be a good race for everyone. And I mean, I think for the athletes that have a chance and the teams to race on there on October 13th and then turn around a couple weeks later, race again. Certainly see this probably being the PR course for a lot of athletes during the season. But pretty forgiving course, spectator friendly, and I think everyone in the conference is looking forward to being back in Salem.
Jake, your thoughts?
Yeah, and I think, yeah, I mean, logistically, I definitely think it helps. It favors some mid-distance athletes. You know, you take away some of the grind of cross country with the hills and things of that nature, and you lay it out like a track. It's gonna be fast, and without things to kind of break up the pace a little bit, I expect that it'll get rolling. Obviously, it's a conference championship, so never know what tactics will be like. But I love that course. I think it's a great segue for regionals and nationals, being that it's not difficult. It's pretty easy to recover from. Athletes can get out there, work together, and kind of have a good practice towards more championship racing in the future.
Okay. Guys, we'll talk about, what you actually have coming out there right now. And Derek, I'm going to come back to you because obviously this is a place where you're evaluating your own squad coming in. What do you see from the Roanoke men and women this year when you guys get out there on the cross-country courses?
Yeah, I mean, taking over a new group of men and women to just learn who they are, what works for them, what doesn't work for them. So I'm still trying to figure all of that stuff out. So, I mean, but so far in our practices and just in team meetings and these kind of things, I think we have we have a good young group and a group that is really gelling well together that I'm excited about more than I expected, to be completely honest. I didn't really know what I was kind of getting into from that standpoint, and so I'm really excited about this group with I think we'll surprise some people by the end of the year. I mean, who knows what that looks like from a play standpoint. I just think the team camaraderie and the togetherness that we have right now is, they're all building on each other right now. So that's something that I'm looking at that, I'm excited for, and hopefully we can either stay where we were in the conference last year or maybe improve upon it on the women's side. I think we were a little down on the women's side compared to where we normally are last year. So, yeah, so that's what we're looking at.
Brandon, talk about your men's program a little bit. Good, strong showing that we've alluded to a couple times here. You had a few guys, I think, compete over the summer this year at some different events as well. But talk about the work you've done so far and what you expect out of your boys this fall.
Yeah, we still feel like we're coming off of a great year last year. We seem to be riding on the bubble the last handful of years when it comes to a national presence, and we're obviously hopeful to push past that. I mean, we're setting up a really competitive schedule and racing at Paul Short, going up to Geneseo. I mean, Lynchburg's doing the same sort of progression in their schedule, as are a lot of other top teams. I think when an initial look, I think there's probably 12 teams in the top 25, top 35 that we're going to see on our schedule this year, including multiple times against Lynchburg, seeing a team like Emory during the regular season. And I think it'll set us up well for the end of the year. I mean, certainly Charles is a big loss up front, but really after that, we return a lot of experienced runners, all conference, all region runners from the last year or two. It's a very experienced crew. I've been very pleased with my first year group and how they've responded to just our week one together, how they worked over the summer and just transitioning into WNL cross country. Colin Barrett had a tremendous first year campaign for us, being rookie of the year, being all conference runner in the 10K, finished in third outdoors. And then he was actually secured a spot at running at the USA U20 championships out in Eugene. Ran the 10K out there. It was a tremendous experience for him, great representation for WNL in our program, and just a very unique opportunity. So I think that gave him a lot of confidence moving forward into a sophomore year. And I know feels like he's got a lot more to prove this year, but really there's a few first years that we have that have run faster high school PRs than what Colin did as a first year last year. And if they could put together the year that Colin did, then I feel really strong about what our team's going to look like and how that's going to gel with our experienced runners. But we certainly have a lot to look forward to, a lot to be excited about for this fall. And we're looking forward to getting back to work. And that'll start this weekend with the opening meet at University of Richmond.
Well, we hope you do pop that bubble this year. We turn to Jake, and he's got two programs that have found their way through the bubbles that be there. If you look at, I'm a soccer fan in Southampton. We got the bubbles all over the place looking at that sort of stuff. And Jake, your squads have kind of worked through all that. National caliber, both teams last year making the field as actual squads. Talk a little bit about what you returned, though, because you've got a lot of it back. And are we in store for a lot of last year? We got some struggles still to work through from the Lynchburg Hornets perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long way to November. I think we look great now, but we understand that now doesn't dictate what happens in championship season. So I'm really proud of this group. It's a really special group coming back. They've really honed in on the process and just making sure the day-to-day life and everything's perfected, and just trying to master the craft. We don't focus on rankings. We try to block that stuff out, not looking at statistics or numbers. It's more about like, how are we going to get better each and every day, coming to practice with intentionality. And they really did that this summer. We had a group of guys that decided they moved out to Utah this summer. We had about 10 of them training, and they're all in. It's really special. I think when you get to these moments and you're vulnerable, you go all in on life. You're like, this is what I want. I want to be the best student athlete that I can possibly be. And whether we do great things or you fall short, I think it's a special experience when you really go all in on something and you live it out together. So I'm just more proud of this group for what they're doing. The men and women look great. I think actually tremendously improved from last year. I think they could do some special things. What's that mean from a national perspective? What's that mean compared to other teams? We really can't control that. We're not worried about that. We want to keep getting better and better and better each and every year, and I'm really proud of where they've came back so far.
If they're better than they were last year, then we're in store for something really special here, because I got a feeling that we're going to have some better programs across the ODAC this year. As we could see that the rankings came out, and I know you take rankings with a grain of salt here, especially in the preseason, because nobody's really gotten out there to run. There's spotty reports of what people have done in over the spring campaign with track and field, and then into the summer with the work that's being done in the pre-work that you guys have both alluded to for both of your programs there a little bit. And Brandon, talk with you about the rankings that we had coming out here. If you want to kind of give us your perspective on the various polls that have come out from the USTF, CCCA, and then Derek, when Brandon's done, we'll kind of take you in from a different perspective on this a little bit. As you mentioned before, being at W&J in a completely different region, what's your take on this region from the outside in the conference here? So let's start with Brandon. Go ahead and go through some of those polls here right now.
Yeah, so I serve as the men's representative for the South region on the Coaches Association, and actually it just so happens that Andy Morocco is the women's representative for the South region, just that we're both conference members. And we're in charge of our regional rankings in collaboration with our region coaches, and submitted, I guess those are every couple weeks, start to be every week here soon. And then there's 10 other representatives, including ourselves, that end up compiling the national poll together. And it's been great to see the representation that our conference have, both men and women, W&L's women, Lynchburg's women, being at the top. And on the men's side, having a program like Eastern Mennonite that's also ranked this year in the top 10. They had a tremendous year last year at the tail end, coming on strong to grab a top 10 spot. And they had a great outdoor season. I honestly think they're probably one of the most improved teams in the conference. Jansen Miller, Bellamy Emmanuel, he was an all-region runner last year. I've heard good things out of the Shenandoah camp on both men and women. I think those are teams that have a chance to break into the top 10, and Bridgewater as well, with a returning national qualifier on the women's side, and Emily Smeds, and then Bennett Cups on the men's side as well. I think he's in that pool of really good individuals that have a shot to be all conference, all region. And yeah, I mean, it's been tremendous representation for our league over the past few years. I mean, I've been at W&L long enough to remember times of 10, 11 years ago that there were no ODAC teams that were in the national rankings. There had been no ODAC teams in the national ranking in a while. And that's certainly changed over the last decade. And certainly Jake leading that charge with his men and women and putting them in tremendous position to be nationally recognized and also competing at that high national level. And our men, Mike's women, have an appearance in the last last 5+ years has been great representation for the conference and for our school. And we're looking forward to hopefully maintaining that over the years to come and continue to push for that national presence. But as it is exciting to see programs like Eastern Mennonite, Shenandoah, others that are making a push for the top. And then the exciting thing always for our conference, whether it's in cross country, indoor, outdoor, I mean, there's always a runner that we're not thinking of. There's a runner that wasn't in someone's top 7 from a year before, and maybe their team isn't in a top 3, top 5 type position, but we've always had very good individuals at the top end. So I'm excited to see who that might be from both the men or the women's side, and how they represent our conference at a higher level.
Derek, coming back to you, let's take a look at your perspective on this region, coming from W&J in a completely different region. What's your take on the ODAC, but also this southern region that we'll be competing in and eventually going down to Barry for a regional championship?
Sure. Yeah. In looking at this region, I would say it's a very competitive region up top, obviously, with when you're talking about how Emory and Lynchburg both did last year, Washington and Lee. I think this region has done really well here in the South with, that top representation there. And I would say it was the same kind of when we switched to this 10 region model. It seemed that the region that I was in moved to what was called the Mid-Atlantic. And we had a couple really strong teams up top with the Carnegie Mellons and the Johns Hopkins, and obviously Johns Hopkins on the women's side won. I don't even know how many national titles they've won at this point. I think it's like 8 out of 10 or something. So, I think from that standpoint, I think this region is every bit as strong and good as the region that I was currently in. So, I'm looking forward to kind of seeing how we can do things here within this region. But I think the ODAC is definitely obviously a very, very strong conference within this region. And, so I'm just kind of excited to see. It's always good to see multiple teams other than just like, oh, we have 1 or 2. It's good when you can have 3, 4, 5 teams showing up in the regional rankings. I think that would probably be a goal for our conference, I would imagine. I would imagine we would want to have a bunch of coaches that are like, hey, we're starting to get our names out there as being some of the best in the region. So anyways, yeah, that's just my perspective from afar on this region and this conference. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. Brandon, come back to you here. What are we to expect when we head down to Barry this year? What's that course going to be like?
Yeah, over the last 10 years, I think this will be our 4th time in 10 years that we've raced down there. They've had to make some changes to the course that we've been familiar with before. I think in the area that we've usually started in, that also will now incorporate the finish. They had a parking lot or something like that took over where their finish line area was. But for those that are familiar with Barry College, I think they're still the largest campus in the world, not just the United States. So they have plenty of land. I think they just had to figure out how it all flowed to make a championship 6K and 8K course while still keeping things relatively nearby. But knowing that Paul Deaton and his staff have hosted before, there's good familiarity if coaches have been around for a while. That's been a special course to us at W&L for our men's standpoint. That was when we qualified in 2016. That was the first time we qualified in 21 years. So certainly always great memories when we go down there, but we've also had some not great regions down there as well. So we'll try to hang on to the good memories, try to replicate it best we can. But the course overall, it's wide open, it's spectator friendly, but there's certainly some bumps there that I think if you're out too hard, things like that, they can come back to bite you. But it also is a course too where you have the ability to maybe run away from some people as well. So I've seen multiple races play out differently. I mean, I think back to 2014, Levi Waring qualified as an individual, but finished 7th overall. I mean, he was only 9th in the ODAC 2 weeks before. He just found himself in a front pack of about 18, 19 guys where really there was no one who emerged as a front runner, and there's only less than 2 miles to go in the race, and there's still this big pack, and he just made great tactical decisions down the stretch, and all of a sudden he broke away with 5 to 7 guys and found himself as a national qualifier. So just as Jake mentioned before about conference championships, I mean, we don't know how some of these things are going to play out sometimes. I mean, there could be 2 miles to go and still a big pack that's left, and it allows maybe someone who's not an expected runner to be a national qualifier. But there could also be run away from people as well. I mean, last year regionals we encountered a hot day, but Jake had guys up there Charles was up there, but it was a group of 7 people that broke away from the entire pack. And then there was quite a gap to go back to the rest of the top 10 and even getting into the teens. So, yeah, I mean, I think it is that kind of course where it could emerge a top group that could run away from the field. But it's still a challenging course, and certainly looking forward to the opportunity.
Yeah, Jake, and we'll wrap things up here with kind of a perspective on the national course as we head up to Pennsylvania, Carlisle, Pennsylvania, hosted by Dickinson College in Southern Pennsylvania. Really, I think the course is in Newville, PA, if you will. But Jake, talk to us a little bit about that. We know they run the long, short run there. What are we to expect when we go there and hopefully have a strong or maybe even stronger contingent of ODAC runners this year experiencing that track?
For sure. I've heard the course is very challenging. I've never personally seen it. I've had some high school athletes compete on the 5K version, which I know doesn't, compare to the 8K, 6K. You get back in the woods, and I heard it's, very rolling. So it'll be interesting trying to prepare for that. I'm kind of approaching it a little bit more like Shenandoah's course, and I thought we prepared for that really well. So I'm hopeful that translates a little bit better this year from a national perspective. But I'm just excited for just to get back on that national stage again, just for some redemption. Our women were solid last year, but our women are bold. They're very brave. They don't back away. They're not scared to go out and do what they need to do. They'll go out hard if they need to. I have a lot of confidence in this group of girls, and I think a course like that is, a grind and it's really wearing. I think that really bodes for them really, really well. Our men were kind of track stars, and we got to figure out how to translate that a little bit better. I think they've made some tremendous improvement this summer in aerobic capacity and doing the things that were needed there to provide more strength and be able to tackle it better. And as Brandon's alluded to, like the conference, like we're going to have some good national representation. I do look at someone like Bridgewater's girl Emily. Like I think every year she's gotten better and better. Spalding and Mike's group at WNL, they're always really solid, and they always have some youngsters thrown in the mix. I know they always have some pretty good recruiting classes, so I'm really excited to see, where they stack up. And EMU, I look for, Bellamy had a really strong track season, and I'm excited to see what, maybe he can do to get in the mix during cross country. But I think we can make some noise on the national stage of the, whole conference. I'm excited to see what they can do.
Well, coaches, we're looking forward to seeing all that. Again, the season starts this week coming up on Friday. Everything gets going really in all sports on Friday, September 1st. And then we get to the grind throughout the year, and we'll see you in various occasions throughout courses here in the ODAC and whatnot. But then toward the end of October, Halloween weekend, I believe, we'll be in Salem for the ODAC championship. We'll have all ODAC schools there in one spot. I think the men go first this year at 11 o'clock a.m., followed by the women's championship at 12 o'clock p.m. Those times are Eastern for our fans. Gentlemen, good luck this year. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.